folks, we need to take a break. So we were talking about the fiscal responsibilities and the fact that your next meeting is what, November 10th?
November 10th, that's right.
The possibility that you have to make a decision. Well, do you have to make a decision? Because the planning board on their last meeting, which is available on YouTube, you can watch it in its entirety, and we did write a story about it. They voted 7-0 to deny that SAP.
Yes. So what the planning board did is, after many hours of study and discussion and interaction with staff, and answering questions and asking more questions, they did vote to recommend a denial. And so the planning board is not a decision-making body. They recommend to the town board, and the town board is the final deciding body. It's
now,
the
were you
governing
at that
board.
meeting, or did you watch that?
I did attend that meeting, and I was very encouraged, especially at the attention paid to the fact that the small area plan has a requirement for a financial analysis. Financial impact analysis is what it's called. The actual document that was delivered to staff is named a fiscal impact analysis. It's an Excel spreadsheet, and I finally persuaded staff to publish the actual Excel spreadsheet. So if you want to dive into the numbers, folks, you can find that on the Chatham Park page of the town of Pittsboro's website, along with the small area plan. Excuse me. What's interesting about that document, and the planning board noticed this and asked a lot of concerning questions about it, is that it only shows one side of the ledger. Every business person I know knows they have to pay attention to both income and outgoes, right? Incomes and expenses. And all this document does is make projections about revenues. Government revenue.
Money's coming out, and without addressing the monies you'd have to spend on some of the things we already touched on: fire protection, police protection, services, etc.
Mm-hmm. And the master plan itself explicitly says that it has to discuss police. And maybe not such wise decision, the master plan also says, for some reason, 168 police officers. So I don't know how they felt that they could have the confidence to project it.
I was going to say, do we have any idea where that number came from?
Whatever. I mean, the master plan has been revised many times already at the behest of the Chatham Park investors. It's not very often that the town of Pittsboro has asked that the master plan be revised. I can think of one occasion, and that was the affordable housing policy, but that was also of keen interest to the Chatham Park investors. So anyway, I'm getting off subject. I think the important thing to note here is that the fiscal impact analysis is a revenue analysis.
Okay.
And at that, it only projects some like 10 or 15,000 residential units. And that's where I said we were going to circle back to the total number of residential units, right?
You said 10 to 15,000.
Yeah, I think it's. I can't remember. In one section it's 10, in another section it's 15,000 houses. But you know, they received permission in 2014 to build 20,000 residential units, and then when they came back and things were refined, it became 22,000 residential units. And then last year we finalized the affordable housing policy, and there is a density bonus in the affordable housing policy. So, you know, when Chatham Park investors build an affordable house, they get credit. They get an 8-to-1 density bonus.
Which means what?
That means that for every single affordable unit that they build, they get 8 additional density units.
That's on top of the
22,000.
22,000. So if they build one affordable home, they can go up to 22,000 and 8 units. Okay.
Exactly. And because they have promised to build 1,650 affordable housing units over the entire 40 years of the project, multiply that by 8, and you get 35,200. Excuse me, you get an additional, it's add it to 22,000 and we reach 35,200. So,
right, because if 8 times 1050, I get 8,400.
So,
yeah.
The bottom line is that they have a legal entitlement to build between 22,000 and 35,000 residences.
And that's already been ver-
Codified.
codified. That's
Exactly.
the word I'm looking.
That's the word.
Okay.
Yep. That's in law, basically. Local law, Pittsboro law. But yes, it's
It's
bankable.
Are
They
there
can
any
take that to the
specifics
bank.
as to where they need to put that affordable housing, or they can pretty much put it anywhere they want, or
That's a deeper conversation.
okay, we don't have to go there if you don't.
And we would be getting to the weeds, I think.
Okay.
There is some language on that in the master plan, but I really think that the important thing to note here is that, you know, I hear from folks on both sides of the political spectrum, growth is just out of control. You got to stop it.
Or at least slow it down. You also have that section.
I hear, I hear people saying slanderous things too about the various boards, and I can say with my full chest, and being the environmentalist, I hope you'll trust me on this, that you know, if anybody's going to be anti-growth, it's this guy. There's no one currently serving in any governing body that I have any doubts about being straight up and honest. I'm really, really satisfied about that. Nobody's on the take from development. What we are doing is we're working within really tough circumstances of competing forces. We've got market forces that flux and flow. You know, the 2008 recession is very prominent in many people's minds still.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're too hard or too restrictive on development, you know, it could be really disastrous. On the flip side, there are some forces, I view them as extreme forces in the state legislature, who are sticking their nose really deeply into local politics and prohibiting local governments from planning in a way that our community wants us to plan.
So
For
they're
example,
trying to apply the same plan for all communities, because all communities are pretty much different, right?
it's a desire to have less rules for development.
Okay.
And so
You were going to provide an example before I interrupt.
yeah, we lost the ability to say anything about trees on private property. So if there's some magnificent specimen tree that everyone in the community cherishes, nothing we can do about it. We cannot save that tree. We cannot ask that property owner not to cut that tree. The same goes for trees as a whole, forests, tree canopy. And that's, for scientists who study things like stormwater, that's very concerning, because we know that forests, intact forests, collect and hold stormwater much better than any other device that humans can engineer. So that kind of intrusive lawmaking at the state legislature makes it really hard for us to create rules for orderly planned development of our community. Another example, I'm going to give two. The concrete plant right next to the Potterstone Village.
Right.
I know some folks, it's 300 feet out of their backyard to the cement plant. And it can run at all hours. You know, they do have to abide by the town noise ordinance, but it's still a nuisance. And that was bad planning. I think everybody agrees that was bad planning. Unfortunately, we kind of got caught with our eye on Chatham Park. Our ordinances were old, were out of date. Our land use plan allowed that use, and if it allows that use, the state legislature says we can't stop it.
Right.
So the other example that I think some people regret having happened is right across the street from the beautiful Masonic Hall in downtown Pittsboro is a gas station. And I think it's a 12-pump gas station. And everybody knows it's underutilized. I know some people who are still boycotting it to this day. And that thing got passed despite the board being unanimous in opposition to it. The community was really unanimous. I had a great array of people of different political persuasions saying to me that they really didn't want it. but we couldn't stop it. We delayed it for a brief time because of some details in their application were out of order. We had really hoped that some behind-the-scenes negotiations with a private investor would, that the buyer, the owner of the property would be willing to sell out and double his money. No, he didn't want to double his money. He wanted to build this project. So
You can't miss it if you drive by the Masonic Lodge.
Mayor Cindy Perry was deeply involved with that negotiation, and she can tell you the history of that very regrettable incident. But the main reason that one happened is because of a 2014 law from the state legislature called the Developer Choice Rule. And previously, a town could change our ordinances and say, oh my goodness, a gas station in that location, that's really not a good idea. There's not enough traffic coming by. We really had wanted to have more density there, or a higher value mixed use or something like that. So we could have changed our rules, our ordinances, or our zoning. But in 2014, the state legislature said, nope, we're going to give developers the choice. And if a town changes their rules midstream like that, then the developer gets to choose before or after rules. And so they would have chosen the before rules.
Of course.
So yeah, the cement plant and the gas station downtown are two examples of where, in my opinion, intrusive state level legislation has made it much harder for our town to plan in an orderly way. But that was quite a tangent.
No, it's okay. It's an open conversation. I think folks appreciate learning about that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's folks watching that weren't aware of that. But circling back to, okay, the planning board, was it last week, did the 7-0 denial. You folks have the meeting on the 10th. Is that a drop dead date for you to make a decision, or what happens on the 10th, and what are the options available to you? Because as you and I have discussed, I was on the Chatham County Planning Board, and I don't have an issue with people and companies asking for things, but my expectation is the folks in the elected officials have the responsibility to get the most that they can for their community, for the benefit of the community.
Yeah.
So that's where I come from.
Yeah, and I thank you for sharing that. I think, what I know is that the town board is not required under the small area plan approval process to make a decision that night. What we are required to do is start the decision-making process. And so it will be presented to us. In my opinion, it's still incomplete, and so I think we can reject it because it's incomplete.
That came up in the planning board meeting as well.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm not alone in thinking that it's incomplete.
Yeah, and that was a 7-0 vote.
That's right.
It was unanimous.
I also think that we have sufficient basis just based on the general welfare, concern for the general welfare. I am comfortable saying no to the conceptual small area plan because I think it is a threat to the general welfare because of these fiscal concerns. Now, I have been challenged by people saying, well, they're going to build 600,000, 800,000, $1 million houses, 1.5, $2 million houses. The revenues from those houses are going to be plenty, people say. If we want to shift the argument to that, if we as a community are okay with 22,000 or 35,000 residential units being built that none of us who live here today can afford, that none of us could really even dream of affording, if we're okay with the idea of us being a community of elites, okay, then let's look at the numbers. I want to see the numbers. Show me the revenue projections, show me the expenditures, present day, like costs of running the town, and then show me the infrastructure replacement costs. And if the revenues match the expenditures, I'm going to have a hard time continuing the argument. But I'm very skeptical, and I have yet to see the numbers. And so, yeah.
I think during the meeting that the discussion came up about home pricing, and then the fact and I forget who said this, but someone had mentioned that you wouldn't know what the market is and what the cost structures would be 5-10 years down the road, but you're being asked to pretty much say, yeah, we want to lock this in for the next 20 to 40 years by voting yes on section 2 out of 27 initial sections that were supposed to come about, all in 2025.
Yeah, it's kind of astonishing that we're being asked such a bold request. That we're literally being asked to give up the power of people who have yet to be elected, of citizens who have yet to move here, because after all, our only power as regular little people is to elect people every 2 years who are our town board, and they represent us. The town staff are under no legal or moral obligation to directly represent the people. That's why we have elected government. The town staff are responsive to the governing board.
And they're also really responsible to meet the laws
The law.
of the
Exactly right.
town and of the state.
Town and the state and the nation.
And I just want to say,
That's right.
You and I have talked about this. I think your staff is doing a great job.
I agree.
I know I texted one of the staff members, say, holy cow, because I watched that whole meeting. That was a late night meeting, and your staff was able to go on, and I think at a certain point everybody just agreed, look, it's just late.
Yeah.
We need to call a halt so we can regroup and get some sleep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So another thing, I think this is a good example. Absolutely, our staff are doing a bang-up job. I mean, they are spending late nights, and it's not just late nights in the meetings, but it's very clear that they're working very hard to try and thread this needle, to try and present plans that work for everybody within the bounds of the law. This is another sticking point. The state law for stormwater protections right now, I think, has been weakened back to, I'm not a stormwater engineer, so please don't try and quote me on this, but I think that it's been weakened back to a 15-year storm. You're not allowed, local government is not allowed to require greater stormwater basins or protections than to meet the 15-year storm.
was Helene a 15-year storm?
Helene was judged widely to be a 1,000-year storm.
Okay.
And even Tropical Storm Chantal, in certain areas of the Piedmont, was a 1,000-year event.
Yeah.
1 in a 1,000-year event. And we're seeing so many of these things now. I mean, in 2018, we had 4.5 inches in 45 minutes. So, whatever the cause is, we know that storms are becoming more severe and more intense. I'm convinced, and I think most people are convinced, the engineers I speak with are convinced, former town engineer is convinced, that the current law is inadequate to proper protection of the public and property as regards stormwater.
Well, there were properties that got flooded out here from this last storm, right?
Absolutely.
In Pittsboro, and I think Reclamation, for example, only came on back into business just this last month.
Yes. Tiana Thurber's business was profoundly impacted. The other commissioner candidate, Candace Hunsiker, lives in a house next to a creek. That creek rose 15 feet. It's not even a blue line creek, friends. This is a creek that goes dry in between storms. It rose 15 feet and flooded her basement, and that's probably the 5th time that she's had her basement flooded.
So 15 feet, looking at Postal, that would probably be up towards the top.
It was very scary.
Okay.
It was very scary, and I helped her shovel the water out of her basement. We were using brooms and all manner of buckets and such, but yeah. So, the idea that staff are there to uphold the law and to answer to the governing board doesn't fill me with great confidence, given that one example. We know that stormwater laws in North Carolina are inadequate. And we know we can do better, especially with a greenfield development like the Chatham Park project, where the incremental cost to go from 15-year protection to 25-year protection is so small in the grand scheme of things.
I got to backtrack. You said greenfield
Yes,
project.
sure.
What's
Yeah,
a
jargon.
greenfield?
Sorry.
Yeah, what's a
thank you.
greenfield project
So,
for those of us, including me, that
A greenfield project means that it's a project that's built where there is nothing there except perhaps forests or fields.
Okay.
Green field. As opposed to a brownfield project, which is usually a redevelopment of an old industrial plant or a house that's going to be demolished in order to build a new. Or infill development, I think, is another category, which is where you build in between existing structures. So, yeah, that's a pretty significant concern, and given how rapidly things are changing with these storms, I really worry what's going to happen 10, 15, 20 years from now. And
So it sounds like you're uncomfortable, and it sounds like the feedback you're getting from a lot of people is they're uncomfortable to making a 20 to 40 year commitment without. I mean, you're talking about projecting what the future is going to be like 20 to 40 years from now, and when you started out, what you were a commissioner, things I'm sure have changed since you started things have changed since you and I talked about having real food in lunchrooms.
that's right.
And some of the projections, 2008, I didn't see that coming right away.
Yeah, none of us did. Yeah, so.
Let's kind of get this to the point where we're wrapping up. Planning board has come up. We'll do a Q&A after we finish up this section. Planning board is recommending you reject it. You're meeting on the 10th. Let's go on two assumptions. One assumption is you're going to reject it, well, let me rephrase that. What are the options? Because it sounds like it can't be a hard no, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be a hard yes. So
I don't see why it couldn't be a hard no.
Okay.
I mean, that's our job, is to make the tough decisions.
So what happens if it's a hard no?
The applicant goes back and rewrites their application.
All right.
And I mean, I've been very, very clear from the very beginning that it's a hard no for me, just because of the numbers, and people respond saying, well, you can't reject it based on size alone. And I say, I certainly can if that dictates if that impacts the general welfare.
All right.
And that's the law, as the public health, safety, and general welfare. We are making a legislative decision based on our assessment as individual citizens elected by the public, serving as town commissioners. Do we feel that this proposal meets the general safety, health, and welfare of the town? And yeah.
So if the board, however it decides to vote, comes up with a hard no, what happens at that point for Chatham Park investors, and what happens from the Pittsboro Town Board and staff position?
Sure. Well, hopefully we can go back to the drawing board with a desire to have a more balanced approach, where the applicant's needs and the public's needs are addressed more thoroughly.
Okay, I know when I watched that town board meeting with you, you were one of the people. There were other people too that asked questions. So it sounds like, and folks, you can watch this on YouTube. It sounds like if you say a hard no, are you going to add any caveats as to, hey, you need to proceed to do this, or do you just say it's a hard no and let Chatham Park investors figure out what they need to do?
I'll be honest with you, Gene. I'm still trying to decide that. If we were to adhere to the letter of the rules in the master plan, then I think that the Chatham Park investors are obliged to bring 16 small area plans back to us. I think that's probably not practical, and staff have very good arguments about the benefit of having a broader scope in the plans for the South Village. There is some misinformation out there, and I want to address this head on. I've done so already in public session on September 8th. You can look back at the the recording from the town board meeting where I was very explicit about this myth. There's a myth that we can't, in a small area plan of the size of, let's just say, 500 acres as opposed to 5,000, we can't have a broader concept of the context of infrastructure like sewer and water and roads and streets and thoroughfares and highways, and that is utter nonsense. It is absolute utter nonsense. There's a table that suggests pros and cons to this conceptual small area plan, and it's just threaded through with this myth that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time. The master plan for the North Village very clearly includes stuff outside of the North Village. It contemplates highways, it contemplates major sewer infrastructure, it contemplates drinking water sources, the Chatham Park Way itself, which is the road that the Chatham Park investors are building.
Yep.
It goes from 15501 north of town all the way down almost near the quarry. Eventually, that's where Chatham Parkway South will connect. That was on that map in the North Village Small Area Plan. So it's already been proven that that's a myth. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can have a small area plan for a section, let's just say, again, 500 acres, that also contemplates a much bigger area and in that way assures continuity and connectedness.
Well, it sounds like that also allows you to take steps. I mean, you've referenced North Village already, and you're saying, hey, we learned some stuff from North Village, and if you break it out to, let's use the 500 acre mark.
It's
then,
arbitrary, but
yeah, whatever the next section amount is, hey, we're doing this, and do they give is there a time schedule as to each section, or just depends on market conditions?
that's another great question. I mean, clearly they're dependent on market conditions, but the town, if we want to be assured of that space and time for iterative learning, for incremental improvement over time, then we need to put some kind of restriction on that. I would suggest that there be no sooner than 2 years between each submission. So, there's been a couple of different suggestions that maybe there should be 3 small area plans for the South Village. I would suggest there be 4, and I think that there should be no sooner than 2 years in between each submission.
So that way you and your staff could learn from as well as Chatham Park investors can learn from those different sections. Because if you're talking about 5 sections, that's a minimum of 2 years. That's 10 years from now, and 10 years from now, in 2035, things may be different than they are here. 2025.
They will certainly be different. Yeah. And as to the size of each of those small area plans, again, I think that the sections. The Chatham Park investors are very good at planning. Mm-hmm. And what I said on September 8th was, they're very good at planning private planning. But what the small area plan approval process is about is public planning. How do we integrate their private plans into what the rest of the public understands, so that other investors can come in adjacent to them, so that businesses can be informed and know, hey, that many acres is going to come up soon, and we might want to look at planting a new factory there, or what have you.
So other investors could learn about what the expectations are, what the community needs are, and what things they should be aware of based upon what Chatham Park's already done. And I know there's some talk about someone wanting to build a shopping mall down towards Apex.
So that NCDOT can be aware, and that public planning process can inform their work, so that Sanford, through their Tri-River Water, can also be aware of these things. So
I was just checking because my phone.
Yeah, sorry, my phone
Oh, that
buzzed.
was your phone that buzzed. Okay, I didn't want to make sure we didn't have an interruption. So basically, it sounds like folks need to watch on the 10th, see what the situation is going to be. If I can't, and the thing is, if you can't watch it live, it's stored so you can watch it later on. That's what I did with the planning
town's
board.
YouTube website.
Yeah, on the town's YouTube website, and that's a real nice feature to be able to have.
It is.
All right, I've got some questions to ask, but is there anything else before we wrap up and get into the questions?
No, I think this was terrific conversation. I'm so grateful for you giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Well, folks, I hope you appreciate it. If any other commissioners want to talk with me, I'm fine. And if Chatham Park investors want to send a representative to talk, we can do the same type of thing. Have a conversation about what's going on. All right, we're going to be back with some questions. Thank you for watching.